Samurai Nippon. The Shock of Okehazama.
Crash! Boom! A sudden thunderclap shook the Tokaido region on the morning of June 12, 1560, third year of Eiroku era. No one yet knew that this day would witness a moment that would fundamentally transform Japan's Sengoku period history. Today, we'll trace the great historical turning point that occurred within the span of a single day. Leading up to that fateful moment, Imagawa Yoshimoto, age 42, the supreme daimyo of the Tokai region, who controlled Suruga, Totomi, and Mikawa provinces, dreaming of Kyoto as his next conquest. How and why did he fall before the young Oda Nobunaga? Let us follow the historical transformation that unfolded in just one day, right up to that decisive moment. But first, please subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. This helps the algorithm show you more videos perfectly suited to your interests.
Chapter 1. The Fateful Morning. Ambitions for the Realm.
June 12, 1560, 500 a.m. Imagawa Yoshimoto awakened at Kutsukaki Castle. The rain from the previous night had finally stopped, but heavy clouds still hung low in the sky. For Yoshimoto, this day was meant to be the first step toward his long-cherished dream of marching to the capital, Kyoto. Having received a secret letter from Shogun Ashikaga Yoshiteru in Kyoto, stating come to the capital and assist in governance, Yoshimoto had begun his invasion of Owari with a massive army of 25,000 troops. Yoshimoto's forces were renowned as the strongest in the Sengoku period. Having formed the tripartite alliance with Takeda Shingen of Kai and Hojo Ujiyasu of Sagami, securing his rear, this was a confident advance. Matsudaira Motoyasu of Mikawa, later known as Tokugawa Ieyasu, was also accompanying the campaign as vanguard commander. The distance from Kutsukaki Castle to Mount Okehazama was approximately 8 kilometers, in modern terms a 15-minute car ride, but for an army of that era, it would take 3 hours to traverse. Swaying in his palanquin koshi, Yoshimoto contemplated how much resistance this fool called Oda Nobunaga could possibly offer. Nobunaga's forces numbered at most 3,000. There was no way this could be a real battle, or so he was convinced. However, at this point, Yoshimoto was making a critical miscalculation. Nobunaga had been holding war councils at Kyoto Castle since the previous night, accurately tracking Yoshimoto's army movements. Nobunaga's intelligence-gathering capabilities were exceptional for that era. Information networks using farmers and merchants, utilization of ninja, and even spies infiltrated into enemy camps. He was conducting information warfare, comparable to modern intelligence organizations. At 600 a.m., Yoshimoto's army departed Kutsukaki Castle. Leading were Matsudaira Motoyasu's Mikawa forces, followed by Yoshimoto's main force, with rear units extending endlessly. The column stretched an incredible 5 kilometers, equivalent to the distance from Nagoya Station to Kanayama Station in modern terms. This massive column was certainly impressive, but it was also a significant weakness: loss of mobility and communication difficulties. The seeds of what would later be called the tragedy of Okehazama were already sown.
Chapter 2. The Decision of the Fool, Nobunaga's Resolve.
At the same 600 a.m., Oda Nobunaga was conducting his final war council at Kyoto Castle. Nobunaga, age 26, still called the Great Fool and questioned by many retainers. This young warrior was different on this day. However, this day's Nobunaga was different. Calm, composed, and formulating a surprisingly bold strategy. I will take Yoshimoto's head. Nobunaga concluded the war council with this single statement. His retainers were speechless. 25,000 versus 3,000, common sense dictated this was no contest. But Nobunaga had a winning strategy. He had crafted a plan targeting Yoshimoto's army route, weather conditions, terrain, and, most importantly, their psychological blind spot. Nobunaga's strategy was extremely simple. Strike the main force with a surprise attack when Yoshimoto's army took rest at Okehazama. Success meant taking Yoshimoto's head. Failure meant the extinction of the Oda clan. This was truly an all-or-nothing gamble. However, this all-or-nothing approach was Nobunaga's true forte. At 700 a.m., Nobunaga performed victory prayers at Atsuta Shrine, Atsuta Jingu. Atta Shrine, still visited by many today, held special significance for Nobunaga. Nobunaga prayed earnestly before the deity. The moment he stood up, something extraordinary happened. The wind, which had been still, suddenly began to blow, and the leaves of the shrine's giant camphor tree rustled all at once. Nobunaga interpreted this as a good omen. In the superstitious Sengoku era, this held important meaning. His retainers' morale also rose dramatically. However, from a modern meteorological perspective, this was simply a natural phenomenon. Rising air currents caused by morning temperature increases. It was a moment when chance moved history. Departing Atsuta Shrine, Nobunaga's 3,000 troops began their approach to Okehazama. Via Zenshoji Fort and Nakajima Fort, at this point 900 a.m., Yoshimoto's vanguard had already reached the vicinity of Narumi Castle and begun attacking. Oda's Maru and Washizu forts, the curtain of battle had been raised.
Chapter 3, The Gears of Fate, Morning Battles.
At 1000 a.m., Imagawa's vanguard captured Oda's Washizu fort. Fort commander Iyo Sadamune died. A heroic death, and Matsudaira Motoyasu's Mikawa forces raised victory cries. This news reached Yoshimoto, who nodded with satisfaction. Everything was proceeding according to plan. However, this according to plan was Yoshimoto's greatest trap. Intoxicated by victory, vigilance was waning. Nobunaga was targeting precisely this psychological state. Meanwhile, Nobunaga showed no disturbance upon receiving reports of the fort's capture. Rather, it's recorded that he muttered, "as expected." For Nobunaga, the vanguard battles were merely diversionary tactics. His true target was Yoshimoto himself. To achieve this, he needed to lure Yoshimoto's army into the valley called Okehazama. At 1100 a.m., Marui Fort also fell. Commander Kuchiki Mototsuna also died in battle, and Imagawa forces' momentum continued unchecked. At this point, Yoshimoto was completely off guard. Oda resistance was weaker than expected. At this rate, Kyoto Castle was within reach, so he thought. However, Nobunaga, who knew Okehazama's terrain, had different calculations. Okehazama was literally a depression shaped like a bucket, surrounded by small hills. Even today, this terrain remains in the Okehazama area of Midori Ward, Nagoya City, where one can still sense the historical atmosphere. This terrain was the core of Nobunaga's strategy, attacking enemies who entered the valley from above. This was a tactic reminiscent of Minamoto no Yoshitsune's famous reverse drop at Hyotorigo. Around noon, Yoshimoto's main force finally arrived at Okehazama. Yoshimoto ordered a lunch break near the summit of Mount Okehazama. For soldiers exhausted from long marching, this was the long-awaited rest. But Yoshimoto didn't know at this very moment, 3,000 Oda troops were lurking in the surrounding forests. Nobunaga himself was also observing Yoshimoto's palanquin from the shade of trees. Some theories suggest that the famous dance of Atsumori, with its human life is 50 years, was performed at precisely this tense moment. Life or death, the dream of national unification, or the extinction of the Oda clan, all fate hung on this single moment.
Chapter 4, With Thunder, the fateful 15 minutes.
12:15 p.m. It came suddenly. Thunder began rumbling and heavy rain started falling. This was what modern meteorology calls localized heavy rain from cumulonimbus clouds, a so-called guerrilla downpour. While not uncommon in the Tokai region in June, this day's rain would change history. Imagawa soldiers hurriedly took out rain gear and tried to protect their weapons from the rain. Visibility deteriorated rapidly, and vigilance around the perimeter became lax. This was precisely the moment Nobunaga had been waiting for. Now, with Nobunaga's command, all 3,000 Oda troops emerged from the rain simultaneously. The sight was later described as if the thunder god himself had appeared. The Imagawa army was completely caught off guard. Soldiers who had been resting had no time to grab their weapons before being subjected to Oda's fierce assault. Particularly Yoshimoto's personal guard fell into great confusion from this surprise attack. However, Yoshimoto was no ordinary warrior. Drawing on his experience as a 42-year-old veteran commander, he immediately issued counterattack orders. Stay calm. We have the numbers. Indeed, numerically, the Imagawa army held overwhelming advantage. However, the terror of surprise attack tactics is their ability to instantly nullify numerical superiority. Moreover, the natural force of bad weather was favoring the Oda army. Close combat in rain with poor footing and limited visibility. These were optimal conditions for the Oda forces. At 12:20 p.m., a unit of Oda troops approached Yoshimoto's palanquin. Leading them were Hattori Kazutada and Mori Yoshikatsu. The two desperately aimed for Yoshimoto's palanquin. But Yoshimoto wouldn't go down without a fight. Stepping down from his palanquin, he drew his sword and fought back personally. His outfit, white upper garment with gold embroidery and a tateboshi court cap, was truly befitting the greatest daimyo of Tokai. Ironically, this conspicuous outfit served to reveal Yoshimoto's location to the enemy. Ha! Yoshimoto's sword pierced Hattori Kazutada's chest. The skill of Tokai's greatest warrior was genuine. But the next moment, Mori Yoshikatsu's spear caught Yoshimoto's knee. Yoshimoto staggered helplessly. Seizing this opportunity, another Oda warrior attacked Yoshimoto. Later records name this warrior as Kano, though details remain unclear. In the fierce sword fighting, Yoshimoto's blade broke. Even the renowned sword praised as a masterpiece could not help in this fateful moment. Then, at 12:25 p.m., Mori Yoshikatsu's short sword found Yoshimoto's neck. Imagawa Yoshimoto is taken. When this cry echoed through the rain, Japan's Sengoku history opened a new chapter. Imagawa Yoshimoto, ruler of Tokaido, age 42, his life ended with the reign of Okehazama. But strangely, the moment Yoshimoto was struck down, the rain stopped as if by magic, and a beam of light shone through the clouds, as if heaven itself was blessing Nobunaga's victory.
Chapter 5, 15 Minutes That Changed the Realm. Aftermath.
News of Yoshimoto's death spread instantly across the entire battlefield. The 25,000 Imagawa soldiers completely lost their will to fight upon losing their supreme commander. An organized army instantly became a rabble, particularly for Matsudaira Motoyasu of Mikawa, later Tokugawa Ieyasu. This news would change his life. Having lost his lord, Motoyasu would begin walking the path to independence from this day forward. Meanwhile, the Oda army celebrated their great victory. However, Nobunaga remained calm. While his retainers indulged in victory wine, Nobunaga was already formulating his next strategy: invasion of Imagawa territory, securing Mikawa, and further expansion. For Nobunaga, the victory at Okehazama was not a goal, but a starting line. Around 200 p.m., the Imagawa army's retreat was complete. In less than 2 hours of battle, the power structure of the Tokai region was completely redrawn. Yoshimoto's head was brought back to Kyoto Castle, where Nobunaga displayed it to his retainers and people. The people never dreamed that their young lord, whom they called Fool, would actually defeat the greatest daimyo of Tokai. The impact of this Battle of Okehazama on subsequent history is immeasurable. First, Oda Nobunaga's name became known throughout the nation. Nobunaga, who had been merely a minor daimyo of Owari, instantly became a key player in the Sengoku period. Second, the rapid decline of the Imagawa clan began. Ujizane, who succeeded Yoshimoto, was a mediocre warrior, and the Imagawa rapidly lost power. Most importantly was the independence of Matsudaira Motoyasu of Mikawa. Motoyasu broke away from the Imagawa and formed an alliance with Oda Nobunaga. This became the beginning of the later Oda-Tokugawa alliance, forming a crucial foundation supporting Nobunaga's national unification enterprise. Furthermore, this battle demonstrated to Sengoku daimyo the importance of information warfare and mobility. It marked a turning point from traditional tactics of advancing majestically with large armies to surprise tactics using small elite forces. This was a symbolic event showing that innovation, comparable to modern business strategies, was occurring even in the Sengoku period.
Ending.
More than 460 years have passed since the Battle of Okehazama, yet this single day's events continue to be told by many people today. In Midori Ward, Nagoya City, there is Okehazama Historic Battlefield Park, where statues of Yoshimoto and Nobunaga stand. Every June, the Okehazama Festival is held, where local people reenact this historic moment. 15 minutes of combat determine Japan's history for over 400 years thereafter. Such dramatic events are rare even when surveying world history. Okehazama, which marked the emergence of revolutionary Oda Nobunaga and became the trigger for Tokugawa Ieyasu's independence, who would later establish the Edo shogunate, the miracle that occurred amid thunder and rain, was truly a moment that decided the fate of the realm.